Welcome to my scientifically informed insider look at mental health topics. If you find this video to be interesting or helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I have several questions about conspiracy theories and fears in general. So the questions: can I analyze David Icke's theory about 5G? Is 5G dangerous? Can 5G be used to cause specific emotions? Can I talk about the mental health and personality aspects of this fear of 5G and the conspiracy theory around it? Did 5G cause or does it maintain the pandemic? So those are the questions I'll be answering here in this video. Now, David Icke, of course, is a real person, so just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. Now, 5G is a technology that's being implemented in certain areas, and it will be expanding across much of the world. It brings hope of revolutionizing how we communicate, but there is concern among many that it may cause mental or physical harm. We see a recent study where 30% of consumers believe that cell signals in general cause cancer, and there's even a greater concern around 5G, because there's this idea that 5G is more dangerous than 4G and more dangerous than other radio frequencies. Now, being afraid of 5G is different than believing that there's some sort of conspiracy around it. People who are afraid of it might simply be worried that it could be associated with mental or physical problems. This is a common concern with 5G and radio frequency radiation in general. But somebody who believes that there is a conspiracy connects many fears into a complex theory. And they would tend to believe that the government, the wealthy, and perhaps the media are using 5G to harm or control the population. This is what David Icke believes. Now, I'm going to go through Icke's position and analyze it. Interestingly, even though I disagree with David Icke on many points, he is correct about some of these items. Now, David Icke indicates that there will need to be more transmitters with 5G. So they'll be dispersed throughout communities instead of being centralized like we saw with 4G. He's actually mostly correct on this point, but it's not to gain access to the population for some evil purpose. Rather, it's because the effective range of the signal is lower with 5G. 5G operates with lower power, which means the level of radiation exposure from 5G antennas will actually be less than what we see with 4G antennas. Icke indicates that 5G signals can be blocked by trees. He theorizes that that's why there are certain areas where they're cutting trees down. Now, I don't know why a certain area would be cutting trees down, but David Icke is right about 5G being blocked by trees. It can also be blocked by walls or rain. So it's interesting because Icke definitely reads a lot and he pays attention. He pulls together the conspiracy theories much better than many other people do. That's why I think he's so popular compared to many other conspiracy theorists. So I disagree with his conclusions much of the time, but I do admire his commitment to reading. Now, Icke indicates that 5G will be used, or is being used, to control the emotions of the population, because emotions have their own frequency. So if the 5G transmitters are directed toward people with a certain frequency, they can cause emotions like rage, and that could lead to riots, especially when combined with some controversy or event that is caused by the elite controlling class and the media. Well, this one is easy to refute just by looking at what we know about emotions. Now, Icke says that every emotional response has a frequency. Actually, they don't. As it turns out, no emotions do. There are a few places where you could be getting this idea. One would be this whole theory of vibrational energy of emotions. There's no evidence to support emotions are connected to any frequency. Another place you could be getting it is this research around radio frequency waves being used to detect heart rates and breathing rates, and those rates can be connected to emotions. So at first glance, somebody might look at a study like that and say, oh, all emotions must have a frequency. It's more accurate to say that emotions can be detected using technology based on frequencies. They can also be detected using common sense too, right? Just looking at somebody's behavior. Even if one wanted to make the argument that some sort of frequency can be associated with respiration and cardiac function, bombarding somebody with another frequency would not change those functions or the emotions associated with them. So what about this idea that 5G causes mental and physical health issues? Now, several people believe this. It's not just limited to David Icke, but again, I think he articulates this position better than most. I think it's an important part of the argument that conspiracy theorists make that the scientific community is in turmoil around the issue of 5G. Right? There's a huge controversy. Scientists are divided on this issue. This, again, I think is foundational to the conspiracy theory component. Now, there is some level of division. I don't know if it really rises to a high level, but yes, there's some disagreement on radio frequencies, and specifically on 5G. Most of the disagreements about 5G are about the long-term effects. There are some scientists that believe that we haven't adequately studied the effects of 4G, much less 5G. For example, we see that the World Health Organization and the International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, has classified radiofrequency radiation as a possible carcinogenic. Now, just to be clear, this puts it in the same category as nickel, aloe vera, and pickled vegetables. So hardly a smoking gun that's implicating radiofrequency technology as being dangerous. Red meat, night shift work, and working as a barber are categorized at a more dangerous level. Then we see the study that is often mentioned about the mice and rats, that they were exposed to radiation from mobile phones, and that those at the highest level of exposure developed more cancerous tumors than those at the lower level. This was only true for the male mice and rats. But the numbers really weren't that different. They could be explained by chance. Something that we often see left out when conspiracy theorists talk about this particular study, those mice and rats, the ones exposed to more radiofrequency radiation, actually lived longer than the ones at the lower level of exposure. Another problem with the study, the level of radiofrequency radiation was much higher than anyone would ever experience from a mobile phone. So what about the idea that radiofrequency waves used with 5G can break down DNA? Well, 5G uses wavelength frequency in the range that is known as radiofrequency. So the frequency range between 24 and 90 gigahertz, although eventually it may move up to 300 gigahertz. 1G to 4G uses 1 to 5 gigahertz, so we do see a difference there. Now, the range of radio waves that 5G uses is considered non-ionizing, so it doesn't have the energy to break apart DNA and cause cell damage. Non-ionizing radiofrequency radiation has too low an energy unit per photon to move electrons in an atom. Therefore, it cannot cause ionization like we would see with radiation from X-rays or other radioactive materials. Interestingly, the sun is far more dangerous than 5G. As we move higher up the electromagnetic spectrum, we find the ultraviolet rays that emanate from the sun. They are ionizing, and they do cause damage. Visible light also has more energy than radio waves used with 5G, but we don't see people talking about being afraid of visible light. So it's just important to realize where 5G fits into in terms of other radio frequency radiation. So what about the idea that 5G wanders into the microwave band? Now, microwave radiation is non-ionizing, but it can cause damage through heat. It can heat up water and some other materials. Studies have shown that no temperature rise has been observed from normal exposure to 5G. Now, we do see some evidence of damage in certain studies that is not explained by heat, which in theory would be the only problem with the frequency range used by 5G. Only heat should cause a problem here. There shouldn't be any other types of problems. The difficulty here really comes down to the quality of the studies. Each published article on a topic is not equal, and it really does take a careful evaluation of the quality of the studies in order to figure out what might be going on in a situation like this. You could have 1,000 bad articles that say one thing and one good article that says another, and when you weigh them and you look at the evidence, you might still give more weight to the results of the one article because its methodology was solid, and the 1,000 articles had poor methodology. Additionally, there's a misinformation campaign around 5G, which is much more effective than other campaigns we see around conspiracy theories. So now moving to the mental health and personality characteristics associated with the fear and the conspiracy theory around 5G. So an important note here. Somebody can be afraid of 5G and even believe that there's a conspiracy without having any type of mental illness. Some symptoms of certain mental illnesses, like delusions, do overlap with conspiracy theories, to be certain, but that doesn't explain what's going on with most people who believe conspiracy theories. Many people simply just come to believe things that are not supported by scientific evidence. That's not the same thing as a delusion. After all, some conspiracy theories have turned out to be true. So we just can't lump everybody together and say if somebody believes in conspiracy theories, they must have some sort of mental disorder or mental health symptoms. Now, I'll cover both the fear and the conspiracy theory as I go through the mental health and personality characteristics. There are several reasons I think that this particular fear is so popular and why the conspiracy theory is so common. First reason, we are talking about something that in certain forms is harmful. There is a dosage and a type of radio frequency exposure that could be harmful. It's interesting though because people contend with this type of situation all the time. For example, you could be looking at a cup full of fluid. If it's clean water, it's probably safe to be around. But if it's some other type of fluid like acetone or transmission fluid, that would be dangerous. We have to make these distinctions regularly between items that are grouped together, where some are dangerous and some are not. I think because radiation is invisible, that really contributes to the problem. You can see a cup of transmission fluid and probably realize it's not water, but you can't see radio waves. Point number 2, there is seemingly an admission of guilt by some scientists in terms of the dangers of 5G. This is a real struggle with this particular fear. There is a possibility that this type of radiation could be harmful. That possibility can't be ruled out completely. We don't necessarily see this with other conspiracy theories. Like if somebody believes that the world is flat, it's not like the government is saying, well, part of the world is flat and the other part is spherical, right? So now that person's saying, well, they're admitting that part of the world is flat, so I'm going to believe the whole world is flat. Rather, every credible source, anyway, is saying, no, the Earth is a sphere. But with radio frequency fields, they're saying, well, it may be dangerous under certain circumstances, but we just don't know. That leads to distrust, even though the sources are just being honest, right? They're not trying to start a conspiracy theory. They're just trying to be honest about the potential dangers. Now, this brings me to point number 3, confirmation bias. It's easy to misinterpret a call for more research as somebody sounding the alarm. Confirmation bias is a tendency to only see things or evaluate information that support a current belief. It's very easy to maintain when there are published articles expressing a worry about the effects of 5G. To be clear though, these articles aren't saying there's a conspiracy theory. They're simply calling into question the safety of 5G. Some conspiracy theorists have said that the conspiracy theory is supported by science. That's not true. As I've talked about before, even the idea that 5G is dangerous is not really supported by science. Item number 4, this theory fits well into other conspiracy theories. It has an invasion of privacy kind of feel to it. We have these antennas on every street corner, and under this conspiracy theory, they would be delivering massive doses of radio frequency radiation. If we think about other popular conspiracy theories, particularly those that have a relationship to delusional thinking, we might think of satellites projecting some sort of ray or beam onto people and controlling their minds. We might think of the government trying to control people through television. We might think of the government tracking people through cell phones. So it's not really a stretch to go from these types of conspiracy theories to the idea that 5G is a method for controlling or tracking people. Point number 5, in some cases, the conspiracy theory, more so than the fear, can be caused by mental illness. As I mentioned before, I don't think this is the majority of people who worry about 5G, but there are some cases where mental illness explains the belief system. There are many mental disorders that could lead to this type of belief. Here are a few of the more common ones. Schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. So with schizophrenia, we would see hallucinations, delusions, disorganized thinking. With schizoaffective disorder, you have the same symptoms, but you also have bipolar symptoms mixed in there as well. We could see something like schizotypal personality disorder. That disorder is characterized by perceptual disturbances and ideas of reference. So an idea of reference is when somebody looks at something external that has nothing to do with them, and they believe it does have something to do with them, right? So that type of thinking leads to people putting coincidences together and kind of forming a narrative around it. We could also see paranoid personality disorder. This disorder is characterized by extreme distrust. So a distrust of the government or an elite ruling class could contribute to this particular conspiracy theory. And we also see major mood disorders like major depressive disorder and bipolar disorder when they have psychotic features. So at the extremes of depression and the extremes of mania, sometimes people break from reality. Unfortunately, as I've mentioned before in other videos, belief in conspiracy theories can cause harm. So regardless of what leads to the belief, there is a risk associated with the belief. Now, looking at the question about the pandemic, can the pandemic be connected to 5G? Even if one were to fear 5G, even if one were to believe it causes different mental and physical problems, there is absolutely no connection to the pandemic. Conspiracy theorists connect dots that are not even close to one another. Everything kind of neatly fits into the model of an evil conspiracy. This conspiracy theory just builds fear, right? It's not based on anything real. One thing I've noticed about pretty much all conspiracy theories is they are negative in some way. They're always negative. So if we go back to the one about 5G and controlling emotions, like the emotion of rage, so the government could make people angry and cause riots, like I talked about before, why isn't anybody saying that 5G could be used to promote love, right? Why couldn't they broadcast on a frequency that matches with love and make everybody love one another, right? It never works out that way with conspiracy theories. It's always scary. It's always an evil, small group of people. It's never a bunch of people who just want to spread love. So my last argument against the alleged dangers of 5G would be this. Let's say that it was dangerous. For argument's sake, let's say that 5G could cause different types of problems. It doesn't, but again, for argument's sake. There are massive advantages to 5G, some of which save lives, like increased capabilities to conduct remote surgery using like a virtual reality environment, better access to mental health care, increased capabilities for self-driving cars. Now, if we just take this one for a moment, motor vehicle accidents kill over 3,000 people a day. If self-driving cars only reduce the fatalities by 10%, that's over 300 lives saved every day. Yet we don't see conspiracy theories saying that the government's trying to prevent 5G from rolling out. We know that 5G will save people's lives, so why no conspiracy theories in that direction? Why aren't people saying the government is trying to block that technology, that life-saving technology? Again, it seems like these conspiracy theories just connect components that don't really fit together. It's not a logical analysis of the evidence. Now, I know whenever I talk about conspiracy theories, there will be a variety of opinions. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comments section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching.